Today we are at the April 2025 Victorian Historic Road Race Titles meeting being held at Broadford, Victoria, Australia. This movie is about three friends: replica race motorcycle manufacture, historic racing, rivalry and comradeship. It features replica 1920s Indian Altoona racing motorcycles. These were very rare and fast bikes when originally manufactured. Now, with heavily worked engine internals, these bikes are extremely quick.
We all started off racing hand shifters, and then as time went on a little bit, as we got used to the racing, Lindsay came across, or actually brought this to one of the race meetings, and we all sort of fell in love with it. And I wanted to buy this particular bike, and Peter sort of had first option, and he actually said, "No, I don't really want to buy it. I'm going to tell Lindsay that I'm not going to buy it." So then he went and saw Lindsay, and when he walked out, he rang me and said, "Sorry, Stan, I brought it." And I went, "Damn." I said, "Okay."
Not exactly, you said more than that.
And then Lindsay said, that's no worries. He goes, "I will build you one." And I said, "Beautiful." And as time went on, Peter and I have been racing quite some time now on these Altoonas, and it's sort of actually very hard to go back to a hand shifter after racing these particular bikes because of the power in them. The power is something that you can't explain. It's we were talking about it the other night. It's something like, twin turbo on the biggest engine you can get. The power is enormous, and the power is from the start to the end.
I'd done a fair bit of research on early Indian race bikes, and managed to find a fair bit of information on these 8-valve motors, which were played around with in the early 20s. And I built two of the original bikes. We took one to the Salt Racing and did 159 mile an hour, 280 kilometres an hour. And then one meeting I was racing this bike down at Phillip Island, and Peter happened to come along. You've heard a bit of the story that Peter decided he wanted the bike. We negotiated and negotiated and negotiated and eventually got it. About 10 minutes later, Stan turns up. "Where's my bloody bike?" Unfortunately, it was sold, so I said to Stan, "I'll build you one." So that's the result of the one down here.
Righto, we're talking about riding these 8-valve Indians that when I purchased the bike, and Lindsay was here and he was my chief pit crew, and it took me about, I stalled it on the line a number of times, and until I thought I was a good rider when I first started, and then I got on one of these things and you just had the whole new mindset of the power and the acceleration, and the wheel stands off the line. So it took me probably a good 8 to 12 months to actually hold it flat out down the back straight at Broadford. And you come over the hill at Broadford and they were mono over the top of the hill, so they're that much acceleration in these things. They're like riding like a wild bull that's been slapped on the arse. There's no stopping them, and there's just sheer brute horsepower coming out of these machines. So.
Okay, there's now 5 of these actually built. They're, one is in England, but the rest are here in Victoria. And there's a couple of versions of them. We do put the same engine in a later model frame, and that's another experience for the boys. Yeah.
Right, the configurations of these, they're a V-twin motor with 4 valves per cylinder. So called an 8-valve, but the horsepower is just purely made up of the overhead valve, and Lindsay's design with the airflows into the cylinder with the twin carbies. They race these things in the early teens with Indian, and this style of motor was used in the later bikes. They had a lot of 2 valves, which is a 4-valve motor, and some 8-valve motors, which run in the Arrow over in America and stuff like that. So they're a very rare motor, but these ones, like with Lindsay's construction, is just phenomenal.
Yeah, often after the races we always have a beer and a chat, and we talk about how fast it goes, and sometimes we just sort of shake our heads because of such the power, and we often, we lap people a lot with them because they run different classes in them and so forth, but the power in them, and we just can't explain it. Even to ourselves, we always talk about how much power it produces. Isn't it, Peter?
That's correct. Yeah. But it's quite. We're happy to have a friendly beer over the campsite, but once it's on the racetrack, it's just
no friends.
All bets are
no
off.
friends. But going back to when we first met Lindsay and with the bikes, Lindsay was a seasoned racer, and he was very not secretive, but he played his cards close to the chest. So, but over a period of time with Lindsay, I think Stan and I have learnt a massive amount of knowledge from Lindsay. So it's an honour to have Lindsay go to the site with us, and he takes over as the team organiser and
Chief mechanic.
And it's been an honour, Lindsay.
Thank you. Thanks.